Good morning, everyone. Myself Pallavi from NovelVista. I welcome all participants who have joined us on this webinar today. We'll wait for a couple of minutes more to join more participants, and then we will start with the webinar. Alright, so I would like to welcome everyone again on this platform who have joined us for this webinar today. Myself Pallavi from NovelVista, and I would like to quickly introduce NovelVista. We are one of the largest training organization with a portfolio of 2000 plus courses and team of 800 plus trainers who are associated with us. So here is another webinar that we are going to have for project management webinar series. So with pleasure, I would like to welcome our speaker today, Mr. Hiresh Konikar. Hiresh is a project manager at Volkswagen India, and it's been a long time. Hiresh has delivered some of the best of best webinars today, and he's one of the youngest and enthusiastic speakers that we have for this webinar series till now. He has delivered some of the webinars till now on the project management series, and this is going to be the last webinar of this series, which is all about overview of communication and risk management and overview of procurement and stakeholder management. So Hiresh, welcome on this platform.
Thank you, Pallavi.
Yeah, introducing to Hiresh in a or more better manner, Hiresh is a PMP certified project manager and is experienced in facets of product management encompassing product strategy, product vision, product roadmaps, channel enablement, and balancing these pursuits between technology topic and channeling it further from business case to the business model. He has been instrumental in shepherding current program automation strategy, resulting to capacity expansion and quadrupling operations for the cloud and infrastructure topics at Volkswagen IT Services. Hiresh has completed his engineering from one of the reputed engineering institutes of Nagpur University. Right now, Hiresh is handling a strong team of around 40 plus resources in a multiple domain of his core expertise. So Hiresh, it's been a pleasure to have you as a speaker again, and you have delivered some of the best of best webinar till now. And I would like to request all the participants, please drop us a feedback till now what webinars you have attained, So definitely it will be very encouraging for us and for Hirish as well to deliver some of the more webinars in future. So Hirish, I would like to request you to initiate with the webinar.
Thank you, Pallavi, for the warm welcome and for the warm introduction. Again, just to keep it very short, myself, Hirish Ponikar, I work as a product manager with Volkswagen IT Services India. Today, I would be covering communication, risk, procurement, and stakeholder management knowledge areas from the PMBOK guide. First of all, a big thank you to all of you who have been attending this webinar from the start. It's a demanding task to attend webinars as well when it comes to 10 knowledge areas of PMP. So I hope that you have a basic clarity now as to how these input tools and techniques are working and how we are navigating it through from start to end. For those of you who have started very new, or for those of you who are attending for the first time, what I can say is that we have covered around 6 knowledge areas from the PMBOK guide. And to establish your understanding on today's webinar, maybe you refer the webinars that have been uploaded by NovelVista in the past on the platforms such as YouTube. And then again, you can start with this topic as well that we are going to cover for today. The reason why I'm saying this, because there are around 600 ITTOs. Some of the ITTOs we have already covered when we covered the first 6 knowledge areas from the PMBOK. And with those covered ITTOs, we are going to reference some of those understandings, knowledge bases, which we have created in the past 6 webinars in today's webinar as well. So nevertheless, I would try my best to make you explain about all the ITTOs that we are going to see today. Today we are going to cover communication and risk in detail, and we are going to have a self-study facilitation, and we have to ask you to self-study procurement and stakeholder management knowledge area from PMBOK. Though I would be quickly going through both of them, but not in way too much of detail, because covering 4 knowledge areas in 1.5 hour webinar is very demanding for a speaker as well as for the participants as well, because it's an exhaustive knowledge area, and shooting those knowledge aspects for the first time to an odd length of 1.5 or 2 hours is also very difficult from the grasping point of view. Okay, so a couple of basic expectation settings that we do before the start of every webinar. So as Pallavi rightly stated, these are overview sessions. In overview sessions, we'll give you a glimpse of how these knowledge areas are playing through all the 49 processes that we have. What is not covered in the webinar is a detailed understanding and a practical implementation point of view. Because what happens when you speak about practical implementation, there are a lot of examples which have to be taken up, and with reference to what we are learning versus how the practical implementation would reflect, there is a lot of brainstorming and open house discussion that needs to happen. So we are going to park that you can get an access out of the 35 hours of professional development units that you would gain from PMP facilitation workshop. Okay, this is an overview webinar, and the detailed understanding has to be developed in a facilitation workshop. So coming to the disclaimer and references, we have referred 3 platforms over here. First being the PMBOK, second is Headfirst PMP. So Headfirst PMP is one of the very good preparation guides that you can have. Even Reta Maculae is also one of the very well-known exam preparation guides as well that you can refer. So choose any reference, any knowledge, any exam preparation guide that you want. I think most of those would help you to understand what it means to solve practical questions when you appear for their exams. And last but not the least, some of the references that we have taken from google.com. So communication and risk management. As you can see, for the new ones, I will give you a short recap as to on the left hand side, there are knowledge areas. Today we are going to today we are going to cover communication management and risk management. On the right hand side are the supporting processes which are underlying in process group. So there are 5 process groups in PMP. First is initiating, planning. Second is planning. Third is executing. Fourth is monitoring and control, and closing process group. So closing is the process group which is only used once and at the start. We have covered that in integration management. So you can see the plan for the knowledge areas that we are going to cover today. Most of the processes are lying in planning process group. Some of them are lying in executing process group, and a few of them are lying in the monitoring and controlling process group. So to start with communication management first process, so plan communication management is the first process that we are going to see. Plan communication management is basically you are going to develop, you as a project manager or you as a team lead are going to develop an appropriate approach for handling communications on your project. Okay, and these communication would be based on information needs of stakeholders. So when you are doing a project, there are a lot of stakeholders, internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, your management stakeholders, your peer stakeholders like fellow project leads or project managers. So what are the information needs? So you have to identify, and this identification is not only done by you, but you have to do it along with your team. Okay, so to identify the right stakeholder, to identify his information needs, and according to that, you frame out or devise your strategy as to how communications would happen. Okay, the output of plan communication management would be communication management plan. Every other process which starts with plan ends up giving us a management plan. So above you see plan resource management, so it would give us a resource management plan. Below you see plan risk management, so it would give us a risk management plan. This should be now very familiar to you, given you have attended the first 6 sessions. So communication management plan would detail out what all aspects you should consider as a project lead or project manager in order to develop a communication plan, maintain a communication plan, and also distribute this communication plan with all the stakeholders that are associated to your project. Then the second process that lies in executing process group is managed communications. So managed communication is basically now see why managed communication is lying in executing. What does execution mean? Execution simply means that we do the work, right? So what do you do in managed communication? So you have to ensure timely and appropriate collection, creation, distribution, and ultimate disposition of project information to your associated stakeholder. Now, when I say ultimate disposition of project information to stakeholder means what? Ultimate disposition means that you send out your weekly status reports to your service unit managers, maybe who is on site, who is your direct one-to-one map, or there's some monthly service report to the top management on the customer side, or the monthly support service reports to the internal management that you have. So all of this in timely fashion, all of this in distributed fashion is to be provided to all the stakeholders who are associated to your project. So basically you do a lot of sending things. You send reports, you keep the team informed about the project, you keep the team informed about the statistics, about their performances, about their KPIs. How have you done in the last week? How have you done in the last month? How have you done in the last quarter? And same information you could also dispose it off to the on-site stakeholders, the internal management. So this is basically the part of communication management. And there is a classic question which is asked in the industry, that is, what is the role of project manager? And according to PMBOK, more than 80% of time, a project manager is the foremost and the most important job for a project manager is to communicate and relay information to all of these stakeholders. That's why communication management is one of the very important knowledge areas while you study PMBOK. And also and who are you going to communicate to? Stakeholders. So the last knowledge area that we have in PMBOK is stakeholder management. So communication and stakeholder management would go hand in hand. Okay, so the third process that lies in monitoring and control group is monitor communication. So this is basically plan versus actual effort. So whatever you have planned in plan communication management, whatever you are executing in managed communication, you have to just see that whatever you have said, you are doing it. And if there is any deviation, take corrective and preventive actions. As simple as that. And so to put it in a definition perspective is basically ensuring that the information needs of all the stakeholders in your project are met. So all stakeholders, again, your team, your on-site customers, your internal management, all of them. So these are the very simple processes that we have in communication management. Today, while covering this knowledge areas, many of you know what is communication, right? And all of these theories are very easy to understand. But what gets difficult while you appear for the examination is the scenario-based questions that are being asked on these knowledge areas. Okay, so today I would be presenting you slides, but those slides would look familiar and very easy to understand. But out of that, I would try to associate one simple question that would give you an understanding of how a question on this knowledge area can appear on your PMP examination. But before we do, let's understand what is communication focus. So communication focus, again, as I said, that there are a lot of stakeholders, right, in the previous slide. So what are those stakeholders? They can be, so for these stakeholders, there is a separate communication focus. So there could be internal focus. Again, we said that internal means your higher management or your team members. Your external focus would be your customers. Your formal focus, your media briefings, your stakeholder briefings. Then your informal hierarchical focus, official focus, unofficial focus, written and verbal. So I'll not go into details of each of them, but would like to pick up one example of how a question can appear on your examination. So in your examination, there would be a good paragraph or a scenario which would be stated. And it would the last or the last line of this question would mean that the company has just announced its quarterly results, and the results were this. And the question would be, what kind of communication is this? So that goes in official. So there would be like four options that would be given to you, and one of them would be official. So you have to select that. Annual reports is a form of official communication. So if you read newspapers, so every in Economic Times or maybe some other newspapers as well. So every quarter, some results are announced for a company, which gives you a good information about their current standing, their EBITDA, their net profits, their gross profits. So all of that is official communication, and these type of communication is mandatory by the government bodies, by SEBI. I hope that you know what SEBI is. So all of this is kind of official communication, and such practical questions would be asked on such kind of information from the communication management knowledge area. Moving to our next slide. So let's see what plan communication management process looks like. Input, of course, the project charter, the project management plan, your enterprise organization factors, and organization process assets. In the input tools and techniques, most of it would be familiar, but some of the tools and techniques which would look as new to you would be communication technology, communication requirement analysis, communication methods, your stakeholder engagement assessment matrix. We'll talk about stakeholder engagement assessment matrix when we cover the stakeholder management knowledge area. So talking about communication requirement analysis as a tool and technique, it's basically figuring out what kind of communication your stakeholder needs from your project. We just talked about weekly service report, monthly service report, some kind of governance meet. So that is basically communication requirement analysis. The reason why you should identify what is required is that your project produces a lot of information on day-to-day basis because people are working, you are relaying a lot of information to the higher management, to your stakeholders. They are also cross-relaying back their expectation on day-to-day basis, on week-to-week basis. So there is a mass information which is generated, and you don't want to overwhelm every member of your project team with all of it, right? So your job as a project manager is to figure it out what information has to be passed to the team, what information has to be passed to higher management, what information has to be passed to customer. And once you figure it out, your communication requirement analysis tools and technique would be sufficed. So information does not mean only reports. Information can mean a lot, right? So don't go by technically by what I'm stating as a medium. So relaying information with your weekly and monthly super service report is one stuff, but there could be other information as well. So communication model is the next tool and technique is basically this model demonstrates how various people associate with your project send and receive information. So after this slide, we would cover a sender-receiver model that is very famous in PMBOK. It's a very easy thing. I would explain you how scenario-based questions can appear on the examination and how you should solve it. Then the next thing, the next tool and technique is communication technology. So communication technology can be simple. You are using Microsoft Outlook, you are using Microsoft Teams, all of that. So any mode, medium, which makes a lot easier for your people to send and receive communication is nothing but communication technology. Then the communication methods. Communication methods can be of three types as stated in PMBOK. One is interactive. Interactive is where you exchange information with one another. The second type of communication method could be push, where you send out emails, memos, and faxes to your stakeholders. And the last could be pull. So pull-based communication method is you allow access to your stakeholders on intranet website, e-learning courses or library. So this is basically they are pulling information which you have uploaded, and this pull information is also beneficial from them because they are in a position to select what type of information is required for themselves. Okay, so these are the four tools and techniques which might appear new to you. Data representation, cultural awareness, political awareness, and meetings. This we have already covered as to what it encompasses as a tool and technique. The output of this process would be, of course, your communication management plan. We would see in the next slides what a communication management plan is. This was the model that I was talking about. So this model is basically when a person sends a message, he's encoding. When the person on the other side receives the message, he decodes and sends an acknowledgement message. So understand, so first try to relate what I'm saying, and then I'll give you an example of how a question can appear on this. So once a person receives a message, he decodes it, he develops his understanding, he then frames his response and sends a feedback message to the original sender. Now you have to study this model a bit when you read the PMBOK. So questions can be, there would be a good scenario, there would be, and these questions are the most difficult. The reason why I'm saying this is because you can easily consume 1.5 to 2 minutes to read this, okay, to read just the question, and then you start to pick up one answer for it out of the four. And the question could be, okay, the CEO of the company is sending the message, and then the message would be delivered to all employees, and the CEO has asked some responses from the employees. So what kind of communication workflow is it? Is it starting from encoding, then going to decoding, then again to encoding, and then again to decoding? So as you see on the slides, is encode, decode, and decode. But this sequence can also change with respect to the paragraph which is presented to you in the examination. So such kind of tweaking, twisting the question, making it difficult for you to select, and it's also a game of language. So you have to be proficient while you with your understanding of the language of the question which is thrown to you in the examination. So you have to develop that with reference to the exam preparation guides. In exam preparation guides, there would be scenario-based questions. So I think if you solve those on regular basis while you prepare for your examination, it would give you a knack on solving such kind of things. But read this model in PMBOK. It's very important. Again, your communication management plan, since we are in planned communication management process, output is communications management plan. So what does your communication management plan comprises? It's basically stakeholder communication requirements, your escalation process, the reason for distribution of information, the person responsible for communication of information, person responsible for authorizing the release of confidential information. So these are the aspects we never figure it out as a project manager or project lead in our day-to-day life. Because as we say, we have a tailored approach. We learn from what has been done in the past. We seldom try to change or give a flavor of project management as a methodology to what we are doing on day-to-day basis. So this would give you a new dimension as to what you can extra add to your communication plan and management plan if you already have it. And if you don't already have it, then maybe it's a nice idea. You frame up a communication management plan. You write it down as a team lead or project manager, and then share it with all the stakeholders so that you are setting up an expectation that I will fulfill these information needs of you. And in communication management plan, as I said, the escalation process, you already have it, right? Level 1 escalation, level 2 escalation, level 3 escalation. But did you know before that this has to be part of communication management plan? It's already there. The escalation process is with each one of you who is there attending this webinar. But is it a part of communication management plan? This is something that you would understand while you read the PMBOK. And having all of these aspects figured out in your communication plan, management plan, would give you a very robust edge as a project manager, because there is then no scope of anything left out. Okay, so that's the whole essence of these management plans. So you read it thoroughly and take some meaningful insights and try to apply in your day-to-day life as a team lead or a project manager. You can read the information in the YouTube uploads, and also the same information in a more descriptive format is available in PMBOK. To move forward, the second process that we have in the executing process group is managed communication. So in managed communication, if you see the tools and techniques, some of those are already familiar from the previous process that we have covered. Some new things which are appearing in the tools and technique is non-verbal, feedback, and communication competence. Now, what is communication competence? And while I speak about communication competence, somewhere around I will also cover what is non-verbal and paralingual communication. So while you are communicating, so today I'm communicating you via digital format, right? So you don't see my non-verbal communication gestures, like my facial expression, like my physical appearance, while I'm communicating my message to you, right? So in managed communication, so in the communication competence, it's very essential that you develop your non-verbal communication skills as well, like your gestures while you speak, like your facial expressions, like your physical appearance while you're communicating your message to the team. A lot of casual approach could also mean that you are trying to present some meaningful information, but that is not perceived as meaningful information. The results could be that your gestures are not appropriate, your facial expressions are not that valid for the information that you're passing, or your physical appearance would be too cool or too relaxed to give that sensitive information. So all of these things can be really influencing factors while you present your non-verbal communication skills. Second would be paralingual communication. Paralingual communications could be your tone or your pitch of voice when you're talking to people. So for example, if you sound anxious or upset, that will have an impact on the way people take the news you are giving, right? So your paralingual communications they matter all the time when you communicate the how part of your communication, right? So when your tone of your voice makes it clear you are really excited about something, or if you're speaking sarcastically, people would know, right? So if you're speaking in an excited tone, or if you're speaking in a sarcastic tone, people understand that. So that's the part of communication competence, which also has a subset of paralingual communications. Then feedback. So a lot of time we are into listening mode, especially when you are attending briefings, when you are attending some management sessions. So, but receiving the information is one part. Actively listening to that information is another story. The best way, and then feedback is very important when you understand the communication management process, because the best way to be sure that people know you're listening to them is to give a lot of feedback. Some ways of giving feedback are summarizing their main points back to them. So, for example, if you have attended a 1 hour session from your higher management or from your team member, so summarize the main points that you have listened. So it gives them a feeling that you were actively listening and that you have understood each and every other point that they have made it or brought to the table. So that's what communication competence is: feedback, paralingual communication, your non-verbal communication skills. And and then we will also see what are the communication types. Communication types could be formal written. Formal written is basically a legal document. So if you have a contract which is established between the performing organization and the receiving organization, that's a formal written communication, your project contracts that you have. Then there is informal communications. So informal written, sorry, we spoke about formal written. Now I'm speaking about informal written. So informal written communications could be your email, your leave request that you do, your memos that you stick, or your stick notes that you put it on paper. The reason why we are discussing formal written, formal verbal, and informal verbal is because it's very easy for you to find a question on these tools and techniques on your examination. So there would be a very good and a lengthy paragraph which is kind of presented to you. And somewhere they will ask you, okay, now you select out of these four, which one is formal communication. So you have to understand that the real confusion, what happens in this scenario is that we are very used to sending an email to a project manager or to the higher management. We understand it's a formal communication, but according to PMBOK, it's an informal written communication. So this is the catch, or this is the glitch, what happens when you write the examination. So you select an informal communication, but according to PMBOK, a formal written communication is a type of contract, a legal document, okay, and not a mail that you send to your higher management asking for your leaves, or some kind of email that you have shot to your peer or your colleague. So understand that. Then formal verbal and informal verbal. So formal verbal is when you are giving a presentation of your project. So that is kind of a formal verbal. Informal verbal could be your regular project meetings, your planning sessions which you do with the team, your storyboarding sessions, your scrum meets. So all of those would be informal verbal. Though in your organization they would be called something else, but according to PMBOK, this is what it is, and this is how by this understanding itself you should solve those questions. So read it very carefully because this is quite confusing, because it's not as similar to what we are doing on day-to-day basis. Okay. Moving ahead, this is a typical question that you can experience while you are solving questions from this knowledge area. So there would be a question on the communication channels. What are communication channels? Suppose there are 3 people on your project, so there are 3 mode of communication channels which can be established. But what about if you have 6 people, if you have 9 people? So there is a formula in PMBOK by which you can calculate the number of communication channels that can be established. Let's say that there are 6 people, right? So the formula that you have to use to determine the number of communication channels is n into n minus 1 by 2. Simply put number 6 and do the calculation. It looks very easy because I have taken a very easy example. When you appear for your examination, what happens is they would ask you, they would mention team members, they would mention they would mention the project manager, they would mention some external third-party contractor. Now to count that external third-party contractor as in the N part is really challenging. So make sure that you read how to count your communication channels, who to consider, who not to consider. Of course, with team members, you have to also, a project manager is also an integral part of the team. So while calculating the number of people, you have to see that you are calculating only the valid ones. Okay. So moving ahead, monitor communications process. So monitor communication again is where you do a plan versus actual approach. So if things are not really going as you have planned, then you make change request, right? We have seen this and for most of the processes which are falling in monitoring and controlling process group, a typical output of them would be change request. I think by far for those who have attended the complete series, this might be evident to all of you that any process which is a part of this monitoring and controlling process group has an output of change request or work performance information. Because what happens in execution, you do a lot of work, so their work performance data is collected, then work performance information, then that is transferred to work performance into information or work performance reports. So for those of you who are very new, it might be really confusing to understand what is work performance data, what is work performance reports, what is work performance information. So I would encourage you to read the PMBOK thoroughly in order to develop your understanding about these three aspects. Remember that there would also be a question that is a scenario-based question asking that what would be the output of this particular scenario or this particular question, and the output can be work performance data, work performance reports, and work performance information. With respect to the scenario presented, you have to pick one of them. Okay, and there could be also as an option D, which states that none of the above. It could be none of the above as well. So, and all of this you have to do in in 1.5 minutes or even lesser than that to complete those 200 questions that you are going to face. Okay, so the only tool and technique which might sound new to you over here is stakeholder engagement assessment matrix. So I'm going to cover stakeholder engagement assessment matrix as we move into the next, the last knowledge area that we have. Okay, so we have covered the communication management knowledge area. At least we have given an overview of what it is, how tools and techniques are reflecting, what it means from exam point of view, how questions could be there. Again, read it thoroughly, develop your understanding, and then refer the exam preparation guides for getting competent while solving questions on this knowledge area. So moving to the next knowledge area that we have is risk management. Just a short recap, we covered three processes. First is plan communication management. Second is manage communication, monitor communication. In plan communication management, we saw what communication management plan is, how are various models coming into picture like sender receiver model, what kind of communication focus do you have. In managed communication, we talked about how are you sharing the information, your verbal skills, your non-verbal skills, your paralingual communication, how you send and receive feedback. And then in monitor communication, any deviations that could result in a change request or work performance information being produced. Okay, so moving to risk management knowledge area. So a simple definition of risk is an uncertain event which could happen. So there are around 7 processes in this knowledge area. Most of the processes are lying in planning process group. One of the process is in executing process group, and the last is in monitoring and controlling process group. So if you see a small difference in the resource management knowledge area and the risk management knowledge area, in the resource management knowledge area on the screen, you are controlling resources. But can you control risk? No, you cannot control risk. You can only monitor and develop a proper and develop an appropriate strategy in order to mitigate it or enhance it or exploit it. We could see what these three terminologies are when we cover the risk management knowledge area. So the first process is planned risk management. It's basically defining how you are going to conduct your risk management activities for a project. So every project has risk. Some risk could be threats, some could be opportunities. As a project manager and as a project lead, you would be responsible to foresee those things and get a strategy developed in order to handle those or in order to enhance those. As simple as that. Because as a project manager, you have to ensure that you have to act on smell and not on smoke. And that is why this knowledge area is the most important to understand for any project manager or project lead from that perspective. Okay, so you need to identify risk well in advance, prepare your mitigation strategy, containing strategies, and have an actionable plan which is passed as an information to all the stakeholders, so that when that event happens, people know what to do. Okay, so these are the things in a nutshell, which we are going to see it from a very formal perspective from the lens of these 7 processes. Okay, so first is, as I said, plan risk management, nothing but how to conduct your risk management activities in your project. Identify risk. So there are individual project risk, and there are overall project risk. So we will talk about what is individual project risk and what is overall project risk. Overall, but in a nutshell, and please understand, overall project risk could be external factors as well, like the COVID situation. It's a overall external project risk. Nobody saw it, nobody can contain it as of now till the date. So an individual project risk could be something which arises internally, like your best performing resource leaves when the application is sent to productive, right? It's a risk, because if something happens in the production, who's going to fix it? So that is how the individual project risk and the overall project risk are underlying in this knowledge area. Moving to the third process in the planning process group is the perform qualitative risk analysis. Qualitative risk analysis is nothing but determining the probability and impact that your risk would have. Okay, so this process is more towards prioritizing individual project risk for further analysis and action by assessing their probability of occurrence and impact. Getting the point? So qualitative is nothing but determining the probability and impact, to keep it in a very simple tone. Then performing quantitative risk analysis. This is basically you assign a numerical value to whatever you are trying to substantiate. I will let you know what this is in much finer details when we talk about earned monetary value. Okay, so EMV is a concept where you assign a numerical value to a particular risk that you foresee in your project. We'll see how, and it is a very important process, because there are at least 2 to 3 questions on this single process from the examination point of view. Then once you have identified risk, once you have determined the probability and impact, then is the time, and once you have also assigned a number or numerical value to your risk, then you have to also plan your risk responses. See the flow. I mean, first you are planning, then you are identifying, then you are assessing the probability and impact, then you are doing an EMV calculation to do a quantitative risk assessment, and then you are planning a response. So whenever you are reading any knowledge area, this is very important. The flow is very important for a project manager in day-to-day execution. I can share one example of a personal experience is that if someone asks me what is the value that you have learned by after undergoing this complete process, I would say the workflow, because before attempting PMP or refer, even getting an exposure to this formal education, I never knew that this is the particular sequence. Though I knew what is probability and impact, though I always knew what is risk response, though I always knew that somewhere down the line I have to manage a project risk. But to plan it first, to identify it second, to figure out the probability and impact as third, and to do an EMV calculation as fourth, this formal sequence which you would only find in PMBOK. So that's the biggest advantage that you can have when you are learning your project management implementation by referencing a PMBOK guide. Okay, then plan risk response. Of course, we would plan risk response. What do we want to do? Do we want to mitigate that risk? Do we want to accept that risk? Do we want to escalate that risk? So all of these are risk response strategies. So we would learn about strategies of threats and strategies of opportunities as well when we cover this risk management knowledge area. Moving to the execution process group, implement risk response. Of course, whenever there is an audit, so the audit team members, they would tell you that what is missing, where do you have to put additional efforts. And what I have seen is that once that audit activity is completed, we are not so on our toes to implement those risk responses. So to implement risk response is also one of the process groups. So over here, a lot of influencing skill, a lot of motivating skill, a lot of persuasion skills are really necessary to get those risk response implemented. A risk response can be implemented by a project manager. Risk response can also be implemented by a team member. Okay. So, and the last one is monitor risk. Monitor risk is again plan versus actual. If something is not going according to your plan, then log a deviation, log a change request, and get it fixed. Okay, so moving with the first, as we have seen, so plan risk response, plan risk management knowledge area. So risk management plan would be the output of this process. And what is risk management plan? Now, risk management plan, it is going to tell you how you are going to handle risk on your project. And it also tells you how you will assess risk on your project, who is responsible for assessing that risk, how often you would also do your risk planning. So these are the three things which broadly the risk management plan would cover for you. The plan would essentially also comprise of risk categories. So how are you categorizing your risk? To what level are you decomposing your risk? Which means you would also frame out a risk breakdown structure. Then what is the methodology for handling those risks? What does it mean as a definition for probability and impact for you as a project manager, or for your team, or for your organization? Of course, there are a lot of organization process assets which are already there. So if you join as a project manager, you would already have a risk management strategy by your organization given to you. And this is where the tailoring approach comes into picture. But you would easily relate all of these concepts to the risk management strategy that your organization might adopt, because more or less everyone has picked some concepts from the risk management knowledge area of PMBOK while identifying or framing out their risk management plan for a particular project or at an organization level as well. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of what is written over here. So funding is very important. If something happens, from where do you get those funds? Do you get it from your contingency reserve? Do you get it from your management reserve? Remember, in the cost management plan, while we were covering the cost management knowledge area, we talked about type of funding reserves. So this is where that funding is going to get utilized. Your stakeholder risk appetite. In the very first session, we discussed about what, where, how are you classifying your project? Are you classifying your project as a core project, which means that you know what the output is. So the second part is, are you classifying your project as adjacent project where there are development opportunities with substantial risk, or are you classifying your project as disruptive projects like flying cars, where the model to generate revenue would be really difficult, where the risk factors would be very difficult, right? You don't know how to create a flying car as of now. You don't know how much propulsion engine would have to be fitted in your flying car. You don't know what kind of emission standards would be allowed. You don't know how to manage your traffic when it comes to flying cars. So all of this got risk, uncertain, everything which is not being done before. So what is your stakeholder risk appetite? If your customer says that, okay, I want to build up a flying car project, then that's his appetite. That's his risk appetite. So those are the he's ambitious. He is visionary, and with that he also understands that with whatever he is investing, it can take ages to realize the profits, or at the end it might not even fly. So it's a very detailed concept. Read it out thoroughly when you're preparing for exam. A lot of questions could also be there on this part as well. So risk breakdown structure, as we learned in the last slide, that there would be, risk breakdown structure is an integral part of risk management process. If you see it on the screen, so there is risk breakdown structure level 0, level 1 and level 2. So in level 0, it's basically what is the overall source of project risk. Is it a technical risk? Is it a management risk? Is it a commercial or an external one? And with reference to those, you keep on decomposing it again and again until the time you feel that you get an understanding, or your stakeholder get an understanding. Okay, these are the overall individual or overall sources of project risk that my project carries. So it gives you one single representation in one frame that, okay, these are the things which can act as risk, though it might be threats or though it might be opportunities. Next is probability and impact scaling. So a sample scaling would be, let's say, how you categorize it: very high, medium, very low, or nil. So what is the probability? So when the probability is more than 70%, when the time incurred is more than 6 months, when the cost is more than $5 million, then you categorize this as very high on a scale of very high. So that is the probability and impact. So this is just a reference perspective. You don't need to mug up, or there would be no questions on this. So it's just fairly to develop an understanding of how a probability and impact background means when you create a probability and impact matrix. So I'll just give you a glimpse on the next slide about what a probability and impact matrix looks like. So as I said, risk is divided into two parts. One is threats and opportunities. Threats would have negative impact on your project. Opportunities would have a positive impact on your project. On the x-axis, you see the negative impact. On the y-axis, you see the probability. Similarly, in terms of opportunities, on x-axis, you are seeing positive impact, and on the y-axis, you see a probability. So the areas which are slightly grayed out is where you have a medium threat or a medium opportunity. The areas which are heavily grayed out, which is like dark gray, means you have maximum negative impact or maximum positive impact. So this is how you can create probability and impact matrix for all the risks that you have identified in your project, and you can create a very good representation about this. And this is an exercise you should do with your team. It's not recommended that you alone try to develop this entire thing for your project. So involve the team, get to understand what are the threats and what are the opportunities. Opportunities could be new business scaling up, venturing out to some adjacent domain of your existing project, which might turn up as a new business case, and that might generate a new revenue model. So that could be an opportunity as well. So discuss with your team, because it's very essential that they feel involved, in part of ideation planning as well for the entire project. Okay. So moving next is, so we are done with this management plan. Now we are in the second process group, which is, second process, which is identify risk. Identify risk is again, as I said, that you have to bring your team members along. So if you see the tools and techniques, it's basically data gathering, brainstorming, checklist, interviews. Interviews is basically where you get in touch with your external stakeholders, understand their expectation, understand their fears, understand their vision, ambition to understand the opportunities. So all of that would comprise in tools and techniques of identify risk. Then again, interpersonal and team skills, because in order to extract information, you need to have a knack of how you talk to people, how you provide a logical sequence to extract the information that you need, which you can process, so that you are in a better position to make a decision out of the data that is being extracted. So you need to have those strong interpersonal and team skills in order to extract and identify the risk which every person individually has in his or her mind. Because when this information is extracted, then you do a probability and impact calculation, and you create a probability and impact matrix. Understanding the logical sequence of how it's getting, you extract information, you assign probability and impact numbers, and you create a probability and impact matrix. So that's the overall part of this process. And then there are two outputs, very simple. One is risk register and one is risk report. Risk register would mean that you have identified risk, you know who the project risk owners are, and the list of potential risk responses. So when you identify risk, when you identify risk, you have to also identify who are the risk owners and what are your potential risk responses. So we will understand next what are the kind of responses in terms of threats and opportunities. What the risk report would look like. So this is how it would look like. And so I have identified, so I have marked as bold in the second line. I have marked the second line as bold. The results of perform qualitative risk analysis, perform quantitative risk analysis, plan risk response, implement risk response, and monitor risk are included in risk report. So 99% of time you would get a question on your PMP examination that the results of all of this process are stored in which kind of report. It's a risk. So you would get a question that risk register, your risk report, some kind of another two dummy answers, and then you would be asked to select one of those. So every line that is mentioned in PMBOK, you have to read it thoroughly so that you have clarity on what it means in terms of project management. So and having developed that understanding, it would be easier to select the most appropriate answer on your PMP examination. Okay, so but generally speaking about the risk report, it is the source of overall project risk and summary information of the individual project risk that you have on your project. Speaking about the next, which is qualitative risk analysis. Again, qualitative risk analysis, we have spoken about probability and impact. So if you see the tool and technique, there is this part which is called as risk probability and impact assessment. Apart from that, the data quality assessment and about assessment of other risk parameter, you can read it from PMBOK. It's very easy to understand. And let's see. So the inputs would be, as we always speak, inputs would be carried out from the last process that you have undergone, and also some additional inputs from the other management plans that you have. Over on the right hand side as an output, you would see a lot of document updates. So so if you see, there is no output basically for qualitative risk analysis and no output. So no output in terms of substantial and unique output for quantitative risk analysis as well. And we have spoken about probability and impact. So this is how you can do a risk analysis. We have already spoken about what those medium grade cells are, what those dark gray cells are. So it's basically there where you have high probability and high impact. So this such kind of exercises can be done with your team members, as we have spoken in the last slide. Okay, so qualitative and quantitative analysis. So what does qualitative and quantitative analysis mean? Qualitative is some ranking your risk in terms of probability and impact. And now we have to see quantitative analysis. So it's a very uncommon terminology, that quantitative risk analysis. So what does that mean? It's basically assigning a number to see whether this approach is beneficial or not. And to give us a very small example, I've picked this from head first. It's very easy for you to develop a person to run a marathon in for maybe 3 or 5 months. But would it also mean that you develop this person to climb a Mount Everest? Maybe you give him a training, but what are the chances of success? What is the probability of him really getting to the peak of Mount Everest? And to substantiate that, the last line which we have written is that from 1950s, 10,000 people have attempted to climb. Out of those 10,000 people, only 1,200 have succeeded, while 200 have died. So this underscore 200 have died is a very meaningful data for you to do a quantitative analysis. While the chances of making a person trained to run a marathon are much higher than climbing a Mount Everest and getting to the peak of it. So this is how quantitative analysis is being presented in PMBOK, and a very good example of quantitative risk analysis is EMV calculations. So the inputs, tool and techniques, again, the inputs are basically from the previous processes. Tools and techniques are familiar: expert judgment, data gathering, data analysis, representation of uncertainty. This is one thing which is a very exhaustive concept. So I will encourage that you refer PMBOK in order to understand this. But a very core concept on which there are maximum chances that you would see a question on your exam is this decision tree analysis. It is also called as EMV calculation. So it's very easy. May I ask a little time from all of you to just read this to an extent. So I'll put myself on mute for a moment, and I'll give you 1 minute for you to just go through it. I'll explain you what it means, but just take a moment and read through it. Forget about whether you are understanding or not. Just read through it. So I hope that you have gone through it. And now in this decision tree analysis, there is a decision that we have to make whether to buy a heavier tent or not, right? And there are two aspects to it, that yes, we will buy it. What is the cost associated with that? Yes, is $350. And what is the cost associated with the tent of inferior quality is $130. But now there is a scenario which means that whether there would be high winds if we were to buy a heavier tent, and whether there would be a low wind. So there is a 35% probability that there would be high winds. I'm talking about the yes scenario, so focus on the yes aspect. Which means that there is 65% probability of having low winds. With high winds, the impact would be $48. With low winds, the impact would be $10. You go ahead and calculate the EMV, which is nothing but probability into impact calculation, that is 16.80 and $6.50 with high winds and low winds. Now this is the EMV for the branch which says yes, let's buy a heavier tent. Okay, and in order to calculate the EMV for a branch, do nothing, simply add 350, 16.80 and then 6.50. So in this case, if you see the star, so I will just focus because we don't want to spend too much of time over here. So if you see the stars, I have magenta stars at the bottom of the screen. The EMV calculation for buying a heavier tent is 370.30, and the EMV calculation for buying for buying a lighter tent is 473. It means that if you buy a lighter tent, you would incur $473, and that means you would incur $473 as liability. And if you invest $350 in buying a heavier tent, then the losses that you are going to surmount is 373.30. So in this case, what the calculation means is that you should buy a heavier tent given the probability of risk and its impact. So again, so this is a classic, very good representation that I've picked up from Head First Guide, and read it out because it's very easy, and such kind of graphical representation would not be provided, but there would be a very lengthy paragraph, and out of that you should be able to decipher it and paint out a picture which looks exactly the same, and then you make your EMB calculations. Okay. Again, to give you a very good example of how a question can reflect is in my next slide. So let's read it out. Again, I have picked this from Head First. You are managing a construction project. There is a 30% chance that the weather will cause a 3-day delay costing $12,000. Now, underscore the word delay, and now this is a risk. What type of risk it is? It's a negative risk. So assign negative value to $12,000. Okay. Then read the next sentence. There is also a 20% chance that the price of your building material will drop, which will save. Now underscore the save word and put a positive value to $5,000. Now calculate the EMV. So the EMV for this project would be $2,600 because you multiply. What is the probability? The probability is 30% for 30% for a negative, and probability is 20% for a positive. So you multiply 30 by minus 12,000, which is kind of minus 3,600, and the probability of opportunity is 20% into 5,000, which is 1,000. Now you add everything, and you would get EMV for both of these. So the EMV is answer number C, to $2,600. It's a very easy example. You can easily expect into 3, multiply this example by 3 complexity, and that is something that you can expect in the examination. And all of this, you have to do it in less than 1.5 minutes. So this is the skill, that is the ability that you would acquire when you solve a lot of questions on the exam reference guide that you would have. Okay, so I hope that you have a fair, now at least an overview of what quantitative risk assessment is. Okay, and whenever you want to make any project decision, I would encourage that first understand the EMV calculation by heart. Okay, then while making decisions on your project as a project lead or project manager, you can also adopt this. Especially it happens for most of the times if you are into building business cases. If you want to understand or determine which course of action would be the most appropriate, and you're not able to make your judgment depending upon your conscience, so the best would be apply some mathematical calculations from the EMV part. Okay. Again, the plan risk responses. So we have completed the first, that is plan risk management. We have identified risk. We have done qualitative assessment. We have done quantitative assessment. Now we are planning risk. Now we are planning risk responses. So once you plan risk responses, so first of all, how you plan risk responses, as we have been speaking now for quite a long, that there are two things. One is strategies for opportunities, and one is strategies for threats. We have seen in the last that what are threats. We took negative value of 12,000, right, in the last slide, and we took positive value of 5,000, which was an opportunity. So now we would also see what are the strategies to handle threats and what are the strategies to handle opportunities. Okay, so strategies for threat. There are 5 strategies for threat. Escalate, first is escalate, second is avoid, transfer, mitigate, and accept. Now from the exam point of view, again, there would be a scenario. Okay, I would make you explain what these strategies are. From the exam point of view, there would be a good scenario which is painted, a very lengthy one, and they would give you, these 4 options. That can you identify what it is? Is it escalate? Is it avoid? Is it transfer? Or is it mitigate? Now, how are you going to do that? Right? Because the words that are over here look very familiar to you, and the explanation which is given also looks very confusing and familiar. So that is where you have to read a lot and solve these examples. So I'll pick one example. Let's say strategies for threat, and the strategy that we pick is transfer. Now, we all have bought insurance, correct? Everyone who is there, most of us we have bought insurance. What are we doing while we buy insurance? We are transferring the liability to a third-party person, third-party organization. While we buy our health plan, we are transferring the risk to the organization who is selling those health plans. While we buy motor vehicle insurance, we are transferring the risk to the motor vehicle company selling these insurance policies. So whenever you see insurance or the risk being transferred to a third entity, that is where you should select transfer as a strategy for threat. Okay. Similarly, what to do? So whenever you see a threat, you escalate to a higher management. Whenever you see a threat, you can avoid that. Whenever you see a threat, you can have a mitigative action plan. Whenever you see a threat, you can simply accept it, have some contingency reserves allocated to it, and just wait for the risk to happen. Once it happens, you do your corrective and you do your preventive actions. As simple as that. So these are the strategies for threats. Now let's look towards the strategies for opportunities. So strategies for opportunities, again, escalate, exploit, share, enhance, excel. So I would take an example of the current scenario. Now in COVID-19, we must have all read about the Serum Institute of India and its collaboration with Oxford University. So they are now collaborating with each other to find a possible vaccine and to mass produce it. So this is a classic example for strategies of opportunities, because now what you're doing is you are also exploiting to gain mutual benefits out of it, and you are also sharing the success and also sharing the losses as well. If that vaccine doesn't translate into a wild dose, then it means that producing 100 million doses would mean that we have to thrash it down. So this is a classic example of what you can do with opportunities. You share, so you exploit, you enhance that, and you have to also accept it, right? So these are the strategies of opportunities that you would see. Again, so just like the example that I've given about Serum Institute of India and Oxford University collaboration, such kind of scenario would be there in the exam, and they would ask you, okay, is it escalate, is it exploit, is it share, is it enhance, or is it accept? So it's very difficult to choose between exploit, share, and enhance. So read it very carefully. Put oil in your eyes when you read PMBOK, and understand line by line, word by word of what share means, what exploit means, and what enhance means. Only with that clarity of having that clear understanding, you would be in a position to select one option out of that MCQ. Okay. Moving to implement risk response, the only skill that you require to implement risk response is your interpersonal and team skills. As I said, a lot of persuasion would be required to implement the identified risk response. There is nothing much over here. Uh, there is nothing much over here in this risk response, and we can move forward with monitor risk. In monitor risk, basically, as I said, you cannot contain the risk. You can only monitor the risk. And in monitoring risk, you can do audits. So you regularly do your audits to identify if there are new risks that are generated in the project, what has been done for the existing risk, are the risk responses which have been planned in previously, are they implemented, what is the status of implementation. So such kind of things you do in monitor risk. So this is very simple process, and if you see the output of it, work performance information and change request must be looking very familiar to you, because this process is lying in monitoring and controlling process group. Okay, with that we have covered communication and risk management as a knowledge area. What we are encouraging the next is that it's time that you pick up some self-study topics like procurement management and stakeholder management. I have already have slides for procurement management and stakeholder, which I would run very quickly, so we would not go into the tools and techniques, and I would not explain you what the procurement management plan or stakeholder management plan would look like, because we are parking those for self-study. And but let's see what these processes are, and I'll give you a nutshell briefing and a very high level understanding of what you can expect in procurement management and stakeholder. Procurement management is one of the very new knowledge areas, because as a project manager or as a project lead, you are not involved in procurement of material, but there are two important aspects from the contracting point of view which are very beneficial for understanding. So let's move to the procurement management and stakeholder management knowledge area. There are three processes in procurement management, and there are four processes in the stakeholder management knowledge area. So first is plan procurement. Plan procurement is nothing but your decision to make procurements, specifying the details approach, and also identifying potential sellers. So basically, if you want to procure something, you have to identify sellers, right? So it's very easy if you think from the individual perspective, but if you think it from the organization perspective, it's very difficult, because while selecting sellers, you have to have a very fair grounds made while selection, because everything for an organization which is public based, it goes for scrutiny. That's why you have the big five auditing a lot of organization. Big five means KPMG and other things and other entities. So that's why you have to have a very clear and a transparent process while you make procurements. And we are not saying procurement of stationery. Here we are talking about procurement of $1 billion glass casket, which is used in a lot of building firms, construction firms. It might also include the type and quality of steel that you use for railway compartments. So, or anything which needs to be procured externally. For example, defense acquisition. So the procurement exercise in defense, it's such a arduous process. You have seen what happens. So from the political point of view, from the environment point of view, how do they select vendors? It's a very complex thing. So procurement management would give you an insight as to what is the framework for doing all of it. Okay. To conduct procurement is the second process. So obtaining seller responses, selecting a seller, and what is the process to award a contract as well. Okay. Three things are very important while you conduct procurements: obtaining seller responses, selecting a seller, and awarding a contract. And the last is controlling procurements is nothing but managing the procurement relationships, monitoring contract performance, making changes to corrective actions and preventive actions, and closing out contracts as well. Right? Okay. So the next part is this is how the procurement management plan would look like. Yeah. In the tools and techniques, it's data analysis, make or buy analysis. So make or buy analysis is nothing but there would be a lot of questions that you would face, that what is the value if you make it, what is the value if you buy it, right? So if the cost incurred to make that product internally is much higher than procuring it from outside, why not go for procurement, or vice versa? So such kind of things you would already see in procurement management plan. Read about the procurement management plan, because the outputs are very new and very different. Procurement management plan, procurement strategy, bid documents. Bid documents are your RFP, RFI, RFQ. So request for information, request for quotation, request for proposals. So you as a project manager, I don't know if you have submitted this, but maybe if some customer is asking you request for information, what does it mean? If some customer is asking you request for quotation, what does that mean? If some customer is asking you request for proposal, what does that mean? There is a difference to the terminology. So please understand, please read those thoroughly so that you are quite clear what your customer is asking you, or what an entity is asking for in terms of procurement. Okay, so these are called as bid documents. So these are very important. Then in this knowledge area, you would also understand what are the type of contracts. So talking about procurement management, you would understand what are the type of contracts. So what is your organization into fixed pricing model? Is it in firm fixed price? Is it firm fixed price plus incentives? So all of those are going to be are there in the PMBOK. In terms of cost reimbursable contracts, what are, so let's say if you are in a captive organization, so there is always a contract which is very famous in captive organization, which is cost plus fixed fee, right? So is your organization establishing a cost plus fixed fee model with your customers? So what is a cost plus fixed fee model? So understand all of this in the procurement management knowledge area. Okay, then you conduct procurement, how you do bidder conferences, how you advertise. So look at the tools and techniques. So what are how do you advertise? What are the norms of advertisement? How do you hold the bidder conference so that you follow a bipartisan, non-partisan, bipartisan approach? How do you evaluate a proposal? Then the output would be selected sellers, change request, and a lot of other documents which are related to procurement. Finally, in control procurements, claims administrations is very, very new. So also focus on that while you read it. And apart from that, in this process, the outputs look very familiar except for the claims administration part. It's a very easy thing. Just read it out in PMBOK. You would understand what claims administration is. Moving to the stakeholder management knowledge area. So stakeholder is, there are three processes. First is identify stakeholder, plan stakeholder engagement, manage stakeholder, and one is monitor stakeholders. So what does identify? And again, it's very easy that you go ahead with your team, identify your stakeholders, then you plan stakeholder engagement. How do you plan your stakeholder engagement? You understand their needs, expectation, their interest, their potential impact on your project. That is how you plan your stakeholder engagement. Then you manage stakeholder engagement is basically communicating and working with the stakeholders to meet their needs and expectation, address the issues that they're facing in timely manner, and foster an appropriate stakeholder involvement engagement plan. So you need to also involve the stakeholders as well, okay, so that they feel engaged and then they're supportive in the decision making. Then monitor stakeholder engagement. It's nothing but you maintaining your relationship and tailoring the strategies for engaging the stakeholders. From exam point of view, what we have seen in the last, I think we saw this in communication management, where I spoke that I will also pass some information about stakeholder engagement assessment metrics. So this is nothing but you divide your stakeholder into 5 categories. First category is the unaware category. Unaware category means that this particular stakeholder is unaware of the project and its potential impact. Second category of stakeholder is resistant stakeholder. So this stakeholder is very resistant to any changes or results that a project produces. And this stakeholder would be unsupportive of the work or the outcome of project. Third type of stakeholder is a neutral stakeholder. He's aware about the project, but he is neither supportive nor unsupportive. Fourth type of stakeholder is supportive stakeholder. He is aware of the project and its potential impact and supports the work and outcome of a project. Fifth stakeholder is the leading stakeholder who is aware of the project and its potential impact. So this is these five categories. First is unaware, second is resistance, third is neutral, fourth is supportive, and fifth is leading. These five categories. So when you put these five categories and map all of your stakeholders into these five under these five categories, so you have it means that you have completed your stakeholder engagement assessment matrix. So read about this stakeholder engagement assessment matrix in PMBOK. It's a very easy concept, but a very meaningful one, because you need to understand. And I have come across my project management tenure across a lot of these categories of stakeholders, and who are leading, who are supportive, who are neutral. Some of them are resistant, some of them are unaware. So there is always a strategy that you have to adopt while you are managing these kind of stakeholders. So for example, if you have a leading and a supportive stakeholder, so engage with him heavily. Once you engage with him heavily, you understand his needs and expectations. And if you fulfill those needs and expectations, then you are in the good books of that customer, and he might also refer you for some other project that might be upticked in his organization or picked up in his organization. So read about this so that you are fully aware of how you can effectively manage your stakeholders across the project. So it's a very good knowledge area. Most of you would be able to relate to this knowledge area, because as project managers and project leads, we have a lot of stakeholders which come across in our day-to-day engagements and the work that we do. Okay, so from the exam preparation plan, so I would move towards the closing of this webinar series. But before that closure, I would like to share the exam preparation plan that I adopted while I appeared the PMP examination. This is very important for working individuals, because as I have already mentioned in the very first webinar, the game is very different. When we were in school and college, we had a focused approach, but now we have to balance our personal lives and also the professional work that we have, plus we have to prepare for the PMP exam. So balancing these three pursuits sometimes becomes overwhelming, and it is very difficult. So again, to revise it or to mention to you it in a very precise manner, so complete one reading of your PMBOK and your exam preparation guide in first 30 days. Once you are able to complete this, you would get an understanding of the level of preparation or the level of understanding that you have developed. Then once you do this 30 days reading, and once you cover these two books, book your exam. So this is the inflection point. I would say once you pay your fees and book your examination slot, it becomes very easy to chase 3, 4, and 5. 3, 4, and 5 means do 2 readings of your PMBOK and 1 reading of your exam book. This might also turn upside down for you, and it is completely upon an individual's grasping and understanding capabilities of these 2 books. Okay. Then at the last, you should always have some kind of simulator, just to give you an experience and a feel of what it takes to appear for this examination. And simulator changes a lot of things, because it is a planned versus actual approach. While you are working and reading a lot, you would get at a stage where you feel confident about yourself. But examination simulator would give you a realistic. It would do a quantitative assessment of what your preparation stands as on that day. So take the simulator; it's very helpful. Plus, it gives you an experience of what it takes to sit for 3 hours on a chair and solve 200 questions. And solving 200 questions in 3 hours is a very demanding task. And plus, we all have been really oblivious of attending exams and facing the exam pressure that we used to have in our school and college days. So returning it back to those new normal days is a really difficult task. So point number 5 is really important in order to understand, in order to calculate your standing with respect to your preparation to attempt the PMP examination. Again, what can help you is a lot of mind mapping techniques, workflows on all ITTOs, wave of tough questions, so how to tackle them. You can refer a lot of YouTube videos as well on this, or in your study facilitation workshop. There could be a day where you ask your trainer who is supporting you to prepare to take up this, and your numerical questions that you solve in these 2 examination guides. There are a lot of examination guides. I even don't know. I don't have a complete list about that. But the ones which are famous is Rita Macula and Head First. You can refer those. And then available question banks, free and paid. So the free ones could be very easy to. I would not stick to one stance, but in my experience, I found those to be very easy, and they did not throw up a lot of challenging questions to me. So there might be a gap which then develops of a realistic estimates and inflated estimate. Okay, so it's very vital that you, in order to maximize your chances to clear this examination in first attempt, I would recommend a simulator. Okay, so that's the PMP exam. So this is my last slide for today's workshop and for today's webinar that we have. And I would like to present my closing thoughts for this complete series. So what I would encourage the team lead and the project manager fraternity who have attended my workshops, who have attended my webinars, is that you need to generate curiosity in order to read PMBOK and to also prepare from the exam preparation guides that we have. Because if you don't have curiosity, then the whole question of getting PMP certified can also go for a toss. Right? Curiosity is more important to a project manager than it was previously before, because organizations are chasing their plans for implementation from a project perspective. So be curious to explore each knowledge area and get to the details about it by referencing the study material, those 2 books, and have a concrete vision and not just an ambition, because sometimes I feel that ambition is a very fanciful idea of what you should become. But when you have a vision, you have a very clear and larger picture of what should happen to you and everything around you. So once you have a vision that maybe in the next 4 months, I need to get myself prepared for PMP and crack it in the first go, then you know what is expected out of you, right? And I think if you have this right kind of vision, you would unlock a lot of good things which you have not imagined for yourself. And talking about the most challenging part is the current time that we all are facing. And but what I can share is that these times also bring out a million possibilities. So there is no magic wand for clearing the PMP examination. This you have to understand on the very first day. It's a matter of sheer will, focus, and determination to prepare and undergo the process. I can easily share this experience that with me, more than 30 or 40 people have come to the 35 hours of study facilitation workshop. But I guess it's just two of us who have cleared this examination, or for that matter, even attempted those. So that's the whole essence. People are ambitious about getting PMP certified, but then they don't have a very clear-cut vision as to when and how do they want to achieve it. So this is very important. So start your preparation. I think you need to rethink and recreate what you're doing. And also reprioritize whatever is ongoing as of now in your day-to-day life. You should be able to see things that you did not see earlier while you're working on a project manager or a project lead. This is what I can guarantee you when you read the PMBOK twice or thrice, because there is so many new concepts which we have never been exposed to out of the traditional project management practice that each and every other organization has tailored into. So again, as a closing thought, I will say let's use this time for our growth and well-being, and I hope that you and your loved ones are very safe and doing fine. What life throws us or what this current situation has thrown at us is not our choice, but what we can make out of it is 100% our choice. So use this time. There is some leeway that we all are getting in the day's time. So use that small window of opportunity to learn about project management, to prepare yourself, and also to become wise. Because either in these tough times we can become wounded or we can become wise. So I'll choose that we invest our times in being professionals and become wise. So best of luck for your PMP examination if you are planning to attend those. I have to say that these were overview sessions, so I would appreciate if these are not judged by the lens of those details, because details would always be in a study facilitation workshop. And the average time a person is attentive is only for 45 minutes, right? And this has been proven by a lot of scientific studies. Still, we tried our best to manage these sessions in 1 or 1.5 hours, which is still far exceeding than the 45 minutes window of concentration. So thank you for your patience, your interest in attending these webinar series. Thank you to NovelVista for giving me this maiden opportunity to talk to a lot of people and allowing me to get this experience as a speaker. And a special thanks to also the internal training team at Volkswagen IT Services India. They're really passionate about what they do, and they were really passionate and really persuasive towards me for taking this opportunity up and speaking on these topics. So thank you, everyone. Pallavi, I hand over the webinar to you and I open it for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hirish. Trust me, it's a pleasure and honor to have you as a speaker for this webinar series. And you made this webinar series quite successful, because through your experience, through your knowledge, what you're carrying, you have delivered to all the audience very well. People could interact with you, could have, all the experience that you had till now, and you delivered in a really beautiful manner. Thank you so much for being a speaker for this webinar series. And I would really like to thank the whole Volkswagen L&D team as well, who had, proposed you as a speaker, and we are looking forward to have our collaboration in future as well for some of the more webinars in future. So thank you so much from whole NovelVista team to have you as a speaker, and looking forward to have some more webinars from you in future.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for participating in this webinar. We are looking forward to have your feedback. You can simply share your feedback for all webinars that you have attended for this project webinar series. Either you can drop us a mail, or you can give feedback on the WhatsApp number that we have shared earlier. It will be really appreciating to have your feedback, and it will be very encouraging to speaker as well. So looking forward to receive your feedback, and we will be sharing all the webinars recording as well if you're looking for, and we'll be sharing the feedback link as well. So please make sure you will share your feedback for this webinar. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Hirish.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so
Bye,
much.
Pallavi.
Bye.